Shalom. I hate to say this is update number 4 on Kerry, but we are seeing at this time very interesting developments taking place in Switzerland and in Moscow and in Russia and in the Arab countries and all over the United States. And we're looking at, I would say, the final breakdown of the so-called peace talks with the Palestinians. Secretary of State Kerry, again, I hate to use the word or the term best of intentions, because the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions. But Kerry really believes that what he's doing is for the good of Israel and for the good of the Palestinians or the world. Of course, the American State Department believes that if there's peace between Israel and the Palestinians, all of the problems of the Middle East will be solved, like Syria, like Lebanon, Iraq, Egypt, Iran, Libya. All these wars of the so-called Arab Spring have nothing to do with Israel. Horrible wars. Today, 40% of Syria is in exile. 40% of the people of Syria have fled their homes. Over 130,000 people have died. Bashar al-Assad is using poison gas against his own people, dropping bombs full of dynamite just to destroy buildings and to destroy entire neighborhoods. Has nothing to do with Israel. Israel is being focused on by the world, punished by the world, as a scapegoat for the terrible things that are going on in the Middle East. Israel was attacked many times. 1948, 56, 67, 68, 70, 73, 82, all these wars, horrible wars, happened not because Israel wanted them, but because the Arabs, yes, wanted them. And Israel expanded in 1967, and Israel expanded in 1973. And after the 67 and 73 wars, the UN came out with resolutions 242 and 338. And I recommend to all of you to go into your computers, look up UN resolutions 242 and 338, and you will see that it says that Israel should hand over land for peace. But it also continues and says something that the media and the US government and other governments, Europeans, are totally ignoring. It says Israel will negotiate with its Arab neighbors for borders which are secure, recognized, and defensible. And I emphasize the word defensible. Now, we all know United Nations is not a friend of Israel. United Nations is not even a Christian organization anymore. It used to be in 1945. It was a Judeo-Christian Western civilization system. Now it represents all the nations of the world. And you know that 2/3 of the human race is pagan, Hindus, Buddhists, and Muslims. Good people, but they're not Judeo-Christian. And those people who are Judeo-Christian should be supporting the state of Israel and the people of Israel. So if the UN says secure, recognized, and defensible boundaries, it means that the 1967 boundaries are not defensible. It means, by inference, Israel does not go back to the borders of June 5th, 1967. What do the Palestinians say? What have they said all along? I mean, the Palestinians have been honest all along. They've been saying all along, Jerusalem will be their capital. Israel will go back to the borders of June the 5th, 1967, borders which cannot be defended. Israel will have to take in millions of Palestinian refugees, will lead to a Muslim majority, the destruction of the Jewish state. Israel must disband all of its Jewish building across the Green Line, what used to be the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, meaning the uprooting of 700,000 Jews from their homes. And, of course, most important of all, the Palestinian state, so-called, will not recognize the Jewish state, so-called. So what it says basically is that the Arabs have been lying all along. UN resolutions 242 and 338 are based on compromise. For Israel to have new borders, the Arabs have to compromise. Israel compromised. Israel handed over 91% of the land to Egypt by returning Sinai a third time. Israel handed over half the Golan to Syria, so that's 93%. Israel handed over 2%, which is Gaza, that's 95%. Israel handed over another 2% to the Palestinian Authority, that's 97%. where Israel stands today is the remaining 3%. And the Palestinians are saying, no, there is no compromise. Israel must go back to the 67 boundaries, including the splitting of Jerusalem. So what it says basically is that Israel has to go all the way back to the borders of 67, meaning against the UN resolutions 242 and 338, which Israel solemnly pledged. Those two resolutions mean new borders. New borders meaning, and I as a former army spokesman in the Israeli army, I'm telling you, Jordan River, half the Golan that we still hold, and it was a mistake to hand over Gaza. Missiles, to this day, are still falling into Israel from Gaza. Had we kept Gaza, this would not be happening. I want to tell you a joke. And this is a joke that, please forgive me, those of you who are very, very sensitive to maybe slightly off-color jokes. And I'll try to kosherize the joke so that nobody will be offended. There was this 18-year-old high school boy. Nice boy, handsome, everyone liked him. He had good grades in school. He had only one problem. He had this slingshot. And he was obsessed with this slingshot. You know what a slingshot is? You hold it like this, and you pull the rock, and then you break the window. And this young man had to break every window in town. And so no matter how nice he was and how on the surface normal he was, he had to be put in an insane asylum. So he was put in an insane asylum for 2 years, and after 2 years, the parole board, brought him for an interview and said, we want to release you. You're a nice man. You're intelligent. You seem nice. Everyone likes you. And what are you doing 2 years in this insane asylum? We want to let you go, but we have to ask you a question. What is the first thing you're going to do when we let you out of here? And this young kid says, I'm going to take my slingshot and I'm going to break every window in town. So the parole board was left with no alternative but to keep him in this insane asylum for another 2 years. So now this young guy is 22 after 4 years in the insane asylum, and now he's getting bored. He really wants to get out of there, and he knows, he's already interiorized that if he says slingshot, they won't let him out of the mental institution. And so the same parole board sits down with this kid after 4 years in the insane asylum, and they say to him, what's the first thing you're going to do when we let you out of here? He said, well, he knows he shouldn't say the slingshot. Well, there was this young girl in high school that I used to like. I was sweet on her. Oh, it's normal. Bring us the papers. We're going to start filling out the release papers. Because the kid was normal, except for the slingshot. And while they're filling out the papers, he begins to start talking on his own. And he said, and I'm going to take her out to the nicest restaurant in town. Okay, that's nice. He's taking her out for dinner. And then I'm going to take her to a movie. So the doctors looked at each other on the parole board. They looked at each other. Okay, he's going to take her out on a date. That's normal also. And they keep filling out the forms to release him. And then I'm going to take her to my house. So the doctors put the pencils down. And yes, and what are you going to do with her? Here comes the kosher part that I have to kosherize. He says, well, I'm going to take off her shoes, and I'm going to tickle her toes. That sounds kind of strange, but that passed. And then I'm going to tickle the soles of her feet. Doctors start getting bewildered. He says, then I'm going to tickle her up to the knees. And here comes the part I have to kosherize. And we're going to get so excited with what's going on there, and so hot under the collar, that we're going to take 2 slingshots and break every window in town. And what I want to say here is the Palestinian leadership are those people with the slingshots. The slingshot is Islam, and the windows they're breaking, all the windows in town, they're not only Israel's windows, they're the windows of the world. And those windows of the world we see happening not only in Syria, where the Muslims kill each other, not only in Lebanon, where the Muslims are killing each other, and they're killing the Christians also in the same countries. There are no more Jews there to kill, so they're not killing the Jews there. And in Iraq, the civil war is going on. They have the slingshot in Iraq, and they have the slingshot in Egypt, and there's the slingshot in Libya, and there's slingshot in Tunisia. And wherever Islam goes, Islam self-destructs, because the only thing they can think about is slingshots. I know I'm going to be timing this according to the current events. You know, the Russians are holding the Olympics in Sochi. And Sochi actually is very close to the Caucasus Mountains. It's actually only 80 kilometers, about 50 miles away, 60 miles away from the Caucasus Mountains in neighboring Georgia, so, you know, Russian Georgia. Chechnya and Abkhazia and all these countries where the Muslim terrorists are threatening to come in from are not, they're only like 200-300 kilometers away, like 100 miles, 150 miles away. These terrorists have the slingshot in Russia. 9/11 in the United States, there was a slingshot. Break every window in town. In London, the attacks there on the buses, killing 55 people, slingshot. In Spain, 200 people died in a massive train attack. Many trains were attacked in Spain, 200 people died. Again, it was Islam. Do I have to go through the list? Don't you know what Islam is doing all over the world? And so Secretary of State Kerry thinks that Israel and the Palestinians is an exception to the rule. The Palestinian approach is the same approach as Al-Qaeda. The Palestinian approach is the same approach as Islamic Jihad, or the Salafists, or Jabhat al-Nusra, or Daesh, or Hamas. They are all based on the same insanity, Islam, the same insanity of the slingshot. And with all due respect to Secretary of State Kerry, I really hope somebody in the US government is monitoring what I'm saying and getting this to him. Because that slingshot is going to come back to America with a vengeance. The Muslims have their plan for America. By the way, one of the things, I'm watching my clock as I'm speaking. Once I was at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and I was returning my rent-a-car. And the young man who received the keys to my car from the rent-a-car company, very, very handsome, young man, sweet man. And he's from Indonesia. And he says, America is the greatest country on earth. I said, yes, I know America is the greatest country on earth. Why do you think America is the greatest country on earth? And he said to me, because I used to be a delivery boy in Jakarta, in Indonesia, you know, like UPS, FedEx. And one day I was in the American embassy delivering packages, and an American embassy official pointed his finger at me and said, hey, you want to go to America? There's a plane leaving tomorrow. Bring your family, bring your friends. Let's fill up the plane. No passports, no visas, nothing. Just come, we'll get you to America. Now you tell me, isn't America the greatest country on earth? Legal people in Latin America are trying for years to get into the States, but the Muslims, all they have to do is just get on the plane. US taxpayer money is paying to bring these Muslims into America. And contrary to many people who think there are only 1 million, 2 million Muslims in America, I say there are 20 to 30 million Muslims. And there will soon, because of the Arab Spring, there'll be another 20, 30 million Muslims in America. And I want any of you who feel like it to write to me at my website, and for free, I will send you a link to an interview I received this morning about an American civilian airline pilot who has been flying in thousands of illegal Muslims into the United States of America. Something is happening. There is bribery. The weekly reading of the Torah, Mishpatim, statutes, which I spoke about on another YouTube, talks about do not take bribery, because bribery blinds the judge and it distorts the wise man's thinking. The United States is bribed. The leadership is bribed. The administration is bribed. And America is being overrun with people who have the slingshot. And I'm very afraid. I love America. I want America to be hurt. But what America is doing today, it is bringing in a population with slingshots. America has to be the #1 country in the world. America has to have a revival that will knock it to its senses and bring it back to the original values that the forefathers had when they created the United States of America. Please, Secretary Kerry, wake up and try to understand the nature of the beast, Islam. Thank you very much.